The Arts Night is July 17th. The August event is in the public library, first Fridays on August 1st. Chesterfield Parks and Recreations are coming, and that'll be an announcement along with Perkinson and VCU. More details to come, but lots of exhibits coming up. Can you hear us now? Can you let us know?
I can hear you.
It's good now, Karen.
Good, good, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry about that.
I'm mute. Next. There should be some more. Joe Ring and Marianne have a lot of activities and education. For those of you who've never been to a roller derby, that's a really wonderful, interesting phenomenon of people, mostly women, skating around in a circle, and it's pretty vigorous, I'll say. Yeah, it's a contact sport indoors, and it's decidedly different. Arts Night at Glen Allen, the Valentine Museum on the 20th, the Asylum thing, and the Ghost Hunt. All of these can be pulled up on the Southern Exposure website. And as I said, it was going to be Mary Fisk Taylor, but she's ill. So in view of her illness, she sent her partner. This is about Mary Fisk Taylor, who last year was here and did a great job of critiquing, and the feature article in the Southern Exposure is a nice article on her and her business. And in view of the fact that she is ill, wish Mary a speedy recovery. Her business partner, Jamie Hayes, is here. And they make a they make a great duo. Both of them are extremely talented and are great judges and critiquers, and their knowledge base is superior. Next. Here's his artist statement, capturing life's and meaningful moments. We're honored to have him here, and I think that if you can, as a business, be on a level that these two are and share the responsibilities and bounce things off of each other, it's a really wonderful relationship. Yeah. So welcome, and you've got the mic, and come on up.
Gosh, thank you guys so much for having me. Sorry for the change. But super happy to be here. Can you guys hear us online? Okay. So photography's been my passion. I've been a photographer since I was 7 years old, and have made a living in it ever since. I haven't had any job outside of photography, mostly photographing humans. And now we are the last studio in Richmond that freehand oil paints on top of our portraits, the old-fashioned Richmond way, for those of you who remember that from that far back. I promised the two painters that painted for us that we lost in their 90s, painting for us every day in 2019, that I would carry their legacy forward. What I didn't see coming was that I'd be the old man left in Richmond, the only one that knows how to do the technique. So for what it's worth, I've never seen anything or done anything that's been excited me more than photography than oil painting. But so tell me how this works for you guys. Tell me what you want me to do. How's that? Can you guys see now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I love that the maker decided to do this in black and white, because now we see the texture, versus if this were in color, our minds first would be influenced by the colors. choices. So love the fact that this is black and white. Great lighting coming from above. Also highlights texture. Whenever you want texture in any image, you want a side light, never flat lit from the front. So I love that they've brought out lots of texture in this. And you can, to the point where you can see all the teeny little water droplets all the way around. Probably would darken this area. You're starting to lose a little detail in the highlights up in there.
Excuse me, but we're only
Probably would
seeing the
pull that down a little
thumbnails.
bit.
We're not seeing the individual images.
Thank you.
Not seeing you or anything.
Hang on, we'll get that working for you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's all good.
I also love that this image is a very unique angle and perspective that we're not normally used to seeing. Normally, when someone is photographing flowers, you would want to photograph this inside of the flower, right? Or it's the prettiest, and you would only photograph the flowers that are the perfect, all the petals in the right direction. So I love the fact that this is bending down from the stem. It leaves a great leading line from the upper right-hand corner in. So your eye follows the light. In any image, in image competition, contrast is where your eye goes, either by color or by lightness and darkness. So I love that we lead in. This is the brightest part of the image. Obviously, it's closer to the light source. And then it falls off. But I love that we kept enough detail in the shadows in order to not lose detail there. Two most important things in any image competition, regardless of who's running the image competition, you need to have highlights detail in highlights and detail in shadows. Everything else in between is awesome, but highlights and shadows are the most important part. Second most important thing is a direction of light, not natural light or flat lighting, but textured lighting, because that's what gives emotion and mood and feeling into the images we create. So I think this image is fantastic. The only thing I would do is probably darken these little areas in the corners in the upper right and left, so that your eye, and maybe this a little bit, so your eye only can look here. I love that there's modeling in the background, so it's not a solid dark area. But beautiful. It has lots of mood and feeling in this too, almost transforming an inanimate object into something animate. So great job.
That was by Pat Davis.
Great job.
Just do the arrow. This is titled Against All Perils.
Against All Perils. Love the night scene here. Obviously a slower exposure, maybe, possibly. Love that it was done at after a rainstorm too. The prettiest times you ever want to photograph are right after the rain, because it takes away all of the dust and dirt and debris, cleans the air, and actually gives you crisper, sharper details and contrast in your photographs too. Love the composition. So your eye comes in up from the upper left and creates more of a triangle. Obviously, this has something to do with the storyline. Love that the lighting is such, and the sensor of this particular camera is enough that it can capture even detail in the darkest of shadows and in the highlights or in post-processing. I don't know what I would tell you to do or change. Maybe take a brush, go over this with just contrast and knock the contrast of that down a little bit. I kind of like the misty feeling of that. Composition is really strong. Rule of thirds, triangles. And I really like the saturation too in this. So if the maker added a little bit more color or saturation in there, I think that's fantastic. The lighting on the building, I think, is really wonderful. Again, side lighting brings out the texture and detail of that. So that's fantastic.
That was by Jay Denny. This is Apollo Santorini Farewell.
Wow, beautiful. Now, when photographing images at the first crack of dawn, last light in the evening, you're going to end up with some things that are void without detail, thus the rock that's in the front and some of the mountain ridge in the back. And unless you're on a tripod and you take multiple exposures and bracket your exposure, Nearly impossible to get any detail in the dark areas, which makes this kind of image so great because the contrast level creates such a warm feeling. Love the color. Perfect, of course, the sun just dipping down into the horizon across those. Great composition too, the landmass in front coming in from the right. So this is one of those images that could be multiple images. This, if you crop right here, and leave all of this space and not including this landmass, that's a whole nother image. So that actually is another way that your eye doesn't get caught in the darkness of this landmass. I like that it's not continuous. So wherever the maker is that created this image, where they stood was very important. I love that the sun is off-centered, not in the dead center. Not that dead center compositions aren't going to work. They're just more pleasing to the human eye if you're not working on dead center. It's got to be a really strong image and a really well done image for the bullseye composition. But I love the color saturation in this too. Great piece. This is a kind of image that would look really good printed on metal or on acrylic, where the medium really enhances the saturation. So that type of image going to print is pretty cool. Wish you could get more detail in the shadows, but in these particular images, you're never going to have detail in those shadows like you would at other times of day.
That was by Frank LaPierre. This is titled Beautiful Church.
Ooh, and I love this. So this is a great example. I'm assuming working on a tripod, but could be handheld. We're lowering the shutter speed, or what we call dragging the shutter, allows you to pick up the natural sky and not only the moon, but you get all of the detail in the lights in the church, and properly balancing your exposure to where you get detail even in the brightest of highlights and still maintain all of this detail within the church is fantastic. Again, would want to have detail back in these shadow areas if possible, but the only way you're really going to get that is working on a tripod, taking multiple exposures and bringing back layering in Photoshop or another post-production software and bringing that detail back. So if that were possible, adding the detail back into the shingles, just because the exposure latitude in this particular image is so fantastic. You go from you have detail even in the brightest whites all the way to detail in darker shadow areas. But since a majority of the image is this darker colors, adding detail back into there would take this image over the top. The only other thing I would do, these could be either what we call dead pixels. So in any sensor, when you're pushing your images to the far extreme of exposure, you could get teeny little white lights. They could also be stars too, or planets or satellites or whatever. Probably would remove those unless the sky were full of them, because they almost look like reverse dust spots, if that makes sense, and pull your attention and eye away. But great use of combination. Plus here too, notice we have all kinds of different color temperatures of light. Cooler in the sky, you have fluorescence, probably LEDs, you have a little magenta coming in here, a little green. So extremely well done in a situation where you have multiple light sources. So I love the fact that that color depth brought that into that image. And
Yep.
Structurally, compositionally strong too.
That was by Carrie Osterwinter. This is titled Cold Day at the Farmer's Market.
Oh my God, what a great title for this image. Fantastic. Again, lighting is everything. Composition. I love that the maker left chose this angle and left part of that tent, that pop-up tent in the image, because it totally ties in with the title and gives me that feeling, right? That he's hunched down, he's trying to stay warm. But I love that it has that X brace at the top. Lighting is fantastic, even enough. And this is pretty flat lighting, probably an overcast day, or either that or he's underneath that pop-up tent, which creates soft diffuse light. But look at the texture and the detail. By blocking light here, the light's forced to come in from the sides of him, separating him from the background and giving you all of that detail. And it's just enough light that you get a little bit of brightness on both of the cheeks and still see all of the face. I love the composition with his body and feet kind of off to the right a little bit. It balances with the X. And then all of these other things are just props that kind of give you that feeling of a farmer's market. A crazy great image. Could be beautiful in black and white, could be beautiful in color too. Notice the color harmony in this image. It's pretty much the same color palette throughout. There's nothing that really jumps out at you. Even the green little crate in the back ties in with the green on the camo. Great image. This should do really well in most competitions.
That was by Pat Hutchinson.
Ooh, I'm seeing a theme.
This one's titled Creepy Road Disappears.
Oh, great title. Love the fog, love the mountains. This is something you, I'm hoping this was created in Virginia because this is such a Virginia scene with the fog in the mountains. I'm from the mountains, so this was normal. This is my 16-year-old self driving up, drinking beer out of the back of a pickup truck, taking pictures. So that brings back lots of memories to me. Kind of reminds me of going to Flagpole. Love the pop of color and the boost of saturation just to give you that sense of fall. Bring in those yellow colors. And again, great composition. You know, your eye travels in from the road, comes into the center, but then we're held in by all of these lines that point back in and keep our attention going. Great detail, even in the mistiest, furthest areas back there, all the way through. The only thing that is crazy is almost every lens, when you come to the end, the edge of the lens, these are nearly impossible to get in focus, which is normal. But love everything. The only thing that could make this image better, my opinion, and all of this is just my opinion, would be to include more of the road so that your eye comes in, has more here to support and lead you in. Obviously, the road's curving a little bit. Even if the photographer would have stood here and created that, possibly would have been able to get more of the road curving in. Could love to have seen a whole lot more. This would have been a great tall vertical too, because I can only imagine that the tree branches and colors would only get more fantastic. Also, you know, your eye kind of wants to land here, right? When you look at the composition, because this is an area in the thirds horizontal, thirds vertical. So my point of adding more to the foreground would have eliminated your eye landing here and would have given a great leading line. Anytime you can have a leading line guide you back into an image to keep you from going off, the stronger the composition. Sometimes it's hard to see those things. I photograph, always choose my background first, put the subject in the environment, and then I always light the subject. I never do natural light unless I'm forced to. So I'm a big fan of looking for, and all of my mentors train me how to, in environmental photography, how to create those and look for those leading lines and know where to place your subject for maximum impact.
That was by Martin Evans. This is titled Dark Callas.
Gorgeous. Again, another great example of taking the color out so that you see form and shape and texture. Love the dappled light on the top of these lilies. Great texture throughout. Starting to get a little banding. So here's where you have to be careful in post-production. Anytime you take an image in a digital program in post-production and you push it to the limits. In other words, you take an area that's really light and darken it way down, and or the reverse, what you'll get is banding or posterization, and that's what this looks like. You see these step rings where it's not a gradual flow from highlight to shadow or diffused highlight to diffused shadow. So that is one thing I would eliminate in the background. Not uncommon. A lot of people don't see it because they're so focused on this part. But every square inch in an image competition counts. So in order to get rid of those, what you'd have to do is you'd have to either go back in and put a Gaussian blur, and since the background is blurry, and try to blur those around. There's a couple other technical things you can do too. But this image, definitely, I would get rid of those posterization and the banding in that. And I probably, you know, I wonder what this would look like vertical, leaving a little bit more space. Whenever you are trying to compose an image, always leave twice as much space at the top than you do at the bottom. I don't care what the subject matter is. You need space to gaze. You need space for the image to grow and room around. I think this as a vertical image, leaving this much more space at the top and showing the stalks in the bottom would be a better composition than this. The only other thing I would watch is when you're masking out to drop a background lower, change a background, change the density of background. Be careful when you mask around things. Use a little bit of feathering in your selection, because otherwise when you go to sharpen, there's usually a white line that's pretty obvious or a blurred line that is indication that something has been masked out. So in image competition, that's the one thing judges normally will look at, especially if you've taken a sky down in between the trees on a horizon line. That's nearly an impossible area to select and do, but it's a true telltale sign that you've tried to mask and do things. You know, our masking in our software programs is becoming better and better. And with AI now and going forward, this problem probably won't happen. But great study in black and white.
That was by Susan Kennedy. This is titled Dream Potion Number 9.
Love it. I think using the smoke machine and they're so fun. If you guys haven't played with the new little portable battery operated smoke machines, you'll buy them. You'll buy every one. They're fun toys to play with. But adding that fog in here, whether it's dry ice or a fog machine or whatever, really adds to the mood and the feeling of this. I love the composition. Again, your eye comes in, even the stopper, whether it's deliberate or not, is pointing to this. So your eye comes in, travels around. Wish, again, there was detail in highlights and shadows. So I think to take this image over the top, you would have used a little reflector card, a fill light, or being able to bring light back into these dark areas would take this image over the top. Maybe getting a little bit of banding in here. I'm starting to see a little bit of different color pixels, purples and greens and stuff, and those are normally signs that something's been pushed. Luckily, the texture of the smoke or fog or whatever it is in this image kind of masks anything that you might do. So that's a great texture to get rid of some of that posterization. And strong composition, storytelling off the charts. In PPA, Professional Photographers of America, when you go through training to be a judge, there's 12 elements that you can use to judge any artwork, and be able to use words to definitively say what each element is and how you can improve it. And composition is one of the 12 elements. And this has great, strong composition. I love this. It's just adding that texture to the highlights and shadows would take it over the top.
That was by John Schickler. This is Enduring Grief.
Wow. These emotional images always kill me, because it just kind of puts you in, as someone who photographs humans my entire life, I'm in the story of this tremendously. Wish there was a little bit more space, because that wall, although it's not really big, that monument, it is a horizontal monument. To anyone that's been there, my brain wants to see everything on the right and left, because there's got to be other people in this, unless they happen to be there when no one else is there, but obvious by the shadows or the reflections. In this, there are other people around. To improve this, probably would darken it just a little bit. It's a little light. That would bring out more texture. And possibly playing around with where you stand to take the photograph. In this image, unfortunately, I don't see faces, and I don't know that you're gonna see faces no matter where you stand. But if the maker would have tried a couple different angles, even coming in from this side, you may have been able, if you wait a moment, take a breath, you may have been able to get her saying something to him, or their facial expressions, or the emotion on his face. Because obviously this is an emotional thing, right? She is supporting him and giving him love, but he's obviously leaning on his hand. He's having a hard moment right here. So I would love to have seen more of the faces of them just by waiting a few minutes. Probably the best thing you can do if you're going to photograph street photography, and I'll just call this street photography because subject matters are kind of the same, right? You just wait. It's kind of like getting to the mountain at the perfect place. Sit there until the lighting is perfect, then take the picture, or come back on a second day if you can. A lot of images we see in competition, I hear a lot of photographers say, oh, well, that's when our tour guide was there. That's the only time we had. That's just the moment you were there. If you want to create an amazing image, go back at the right time of day. Go back after you get up at sunrise and go there. The most beautiful images always happen when the light is not flat like this, but when there's shadow and texture. Great emotional image, though, because you get the feel of what's going on, even though you don't see their faces. And giving you these suggestions, this is just my viewpoint. I wasn't there when the image was created. Some of these things may never be possible as the maker. However, I think walking around and taking lots of shots from multiple angles is the best thing you can do to open your eyes to what's possible. Because a lot of times we get caught up in oh, we got the shot and we walk away. Sometimes the shot is the last frame on our camera from that location.
That was by Karen Davis. This is titled Final Approach.
Okay, again, great, strong composition. Would benefit by cropping this much off to move him more over into the thirds. Probably could lose a little bit more up to this ledge too, cropping in here, pushing him to this third and letting that be the opposite third, because right now they're almost aligned. So just by simply cropping this would make a big difference. If I were photographing this, I would move a little bit to see. I love that the rocks are around him, because the alternative is this sticking out of his head, right? If I were the maker were this way, that would stick out of his head, and or getting him in this darker area. I love that there's a little bit of rocks kind of surrounding him. Again, natural light, of course, with the hat, you've got overcast, foggy light, so you see great detail and textures even throughout highlights and shadows. But strong vertical composition. But by simply trying to position him more this way with cropping, and maybe even including a little bit more of whatever's on that side. I always photograph wide, always, because I know I can crop in with today's digital sensors. You can crop in a couple inches and you're not going to lose anything. But what you can't do is you can't back up once you've taken an image and someone says, oh, is there more space around that? You're like, oh, of course there's, because that didn't back up. So I always, whenever the mood is right, whenever I get the best subject, the best lighting, the best location, time of day, all of these things working, I always back up, zoom in, try different angles as fast as I can, knowing that I might need options when it comes to entering image competition.
That was by Patrick Murphy. This is titled Flying by Myself.
Again, great lighting. Love the boats and the landmass at the bottom to give support to the image. Great texture throughout everything, tack sharp. I would start to watch. This is starting to get those sharpening lines around. And if notice here, now you guys will be able to see this in the back more than close up. Notice how there's really light in between here, but it doesn't naturally happen everywhere else. Telltale sign that someone masked out and tried to drop the background down or add light to the center of the image. So these areas in between the feathers were not handled like the rest of the background. So that is something, whenever you're going to do birds and feathers and in between things or in between trees, everything in between needs to look real like it does in the background. So I would watch sharpening and masking and feather that off, but I definitely would go back and darken these areas in between so that your eye's not drawn into those spaces. But I love, this is very unique for I assume it's a pelican. I'm really bad at animals. So the human animal I got, the nature animals, a little harder on those. but I love that the location gives me kind of a sense of feeling of where this is, right? Which I think adds to it, because if it's just a picture of a bird, great, it's just another picture of a bird. But adding this adds a whole nother storyline to it. In great texture. And again, another fantastic use of black and white.
That was by Philip Snyder. This is Foggy Drive.
Oh, no, I love this. Now, see remember what I said before about adding the extra road in the front? This is adding the extra road in the front. Notice how you really get a perspective of where this is, right? So love this. Icing on the cake. Because once I travel back into here, and this tree keeps me going back in, this tree line keeps me going back in, and my eye goes right where it needs to be. It's not in the dead center. I've got great texture coming in. A little bit of over sharpening in the branches because all of them look like there's a little like ice cap around them, which could be. Yeah, there's moisture. Either there's moisture or someone's used texture and structure in post-processing, possibly in Lightroom or Photoshop, to bring out those extra textures. I probably would darken this a little bit because my eye's kind of pulling into that as the lightest part in the image. I definitely would go back and back off on your sharpening because it's obvious in those trees. It's not so obvious once you get into here, which is beautiful. Great detail. This, I actually love that the makers push the contrast of this a little bit. I think that a lot of us use contrast way too much. But if you ever go to print your stuff, there's a big difference between looking at it on a monitor and what the paper will hold. So I think that the contrast of this has added to the mood, but golly, icing on the cake to put that there. Right? That's a phenomenal image.
That was by Joe Ring. This is Foggy Romance.
Beautiful. Again, great use of composition. I would even push this a little bit more by cropping to here, because now we force the perspective to put them more on this third. This is a great example of using different cropping. You could crop this right at the top, cut all this off, and you have a whole different image just utilizing the reflections, which lead me up. You could play around with contrast and try to build a little bit more contrast in, but that may not be possible because the atmospheric fog is it's always gonna decrease contrast. But I love that there's more contrast down here. The only problem is my eye wants to go here, here, and not here, because this has more contrast and this has color. So possibly even doing this in black and white too would help. But I think playing around with compositions and crops, because you got a few other there, cropping kind of like this changes the whole perspective. Sure.
Is that a concern?
No, I make a hell of a lot of money by odd crops. I make it in framing, I make it in matting, and I make it in being able to have the client move up one size because it doesn't fit in the standard sizes. So I'm a unique beast in this fact too. I never make a decision in photography that's not financially based. So because I have to make a living at what I do, I never make a decision as an artist ever, and I could care less. The client who's paying me, they matter, period. So I don't look at things from an art perspective. The art perspective naturally comes, always naturally comes, without me thinking about it or having me being aware of it, because I'm cropping in and changing to what I think feels and looks the best. In today's world in printing, yeah, if you go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby, yeah, it's kind of hard to find unique different mats. And they're always going to upcharge you because that's we just opened our first frame shop. So I know now how the frame world works. Interesting, totally different business, but having the freedom to be able to crop any way you want to actually can create more drama in the image than it does staying by standard sizes. And in today's world, there aren't standard 8x10, 5x7, 3.5x5, 4x6. There's so many other compositions that all labs and people that print all work within lots of different sizes. So we're not limited anymore by staying with standard crops. So at this point in my career, I'm all about creating the most outrageous, make you stop and think, because I want the images I create to remain in someone's brain after I'm not in the room with them. So by pushing and changing that, it's a lot of fun. Now, it depends on how you're going to do it, right? If you're only doing things online and you're only doing things mostly digital and you don't print that much, who cares? Crop it any way you want to. Until you go to print, then you have to worry about ISO, grain, noise, structure, posterization, all of those things, because you are going from a gamut where the human eye sees this much in the visual spectrum, not only in texture, but exposure, to a digital camera that sees this much, to paper that sees this much. So that's why Ansel Adams shifted the development of what he did to expand that range of tonality in photographic print between the negative and the print. By him altering and using the zone system the way he did, he changed the chemical process and altered the exposure and the enlarger in order to push the contrast levels of his images. That's what made his images so unique, is that the average person could take that same picture, but when you processed it out, you didn't get that extreme detail in both highlights and shadows in the texture. But I wouldn't worry so much more now about it. It's so easy for us to crop. You know, back in the film days, it was nearly impossible because you either had to print your own or you had to pay a framer to change the mats. But I wouldn't worry about it. I'd crop with what's in the image. A lot of the work we do too, I start in the client's home and we pick where it's going to go and their why, and then we build an engineer to it, from clothing to everything else. So in today's homes, there's some builders are putting some weird shapes. You know, have you ever bought a house where they put that molding above the TV or above the fireplace that nothing fits in? All of those things will kind of drive you crazy. But now we have so much more latitude for cropping. I would do what's best for the image, and sometimes pushing things to a unique perspective will really change the way you feel about the image more than anything else. But have fun with it. Don't worry about the standard stuff. And if you need custom mats, just call me. I can cut one for you in a couple seconds. It's only a $3 mat.
That was by Saro. This is titled Foggy Walk to the Stockade, excuse me.
Okay, great use of image within an image within an image. So I love framing this door to frame this door to frame the wall. So great perspective. This is a great image that could work black and white and color. Luckily, color works for this because it's still monochromatic, right? The same color of the brick is kind of carried through, and it even gets more dingy as it goes out, which is great because it's kind of a natural vignette to bring your eye in. The only thing I would do is see if you can go back and bring back detail in the highlights, whether you mask that in, whether you drag the highlight slider or the white slider down a little bit. Those areas I would take down a tiny bit. I kind of love that they are light because it actually is the steps you take to get back in there. So I kind of like that your eye goes to that light and in. Composition, crazy strong. Great texture image. Hard to create on a foggy day. I'm assuming that's a foggy day. As the bottom of the image has more contrast than the top of the image. And fog tends, except for dense fog, doesn't tend to lay on the ground as much.
That was by Tony Johnson. This is Forgotten Efforts.
This one just wrenches at my heart. I assume New York City or something similar to that. Great image, great depiction of everyday life in a big bustling city. I think the contrast has been pushed a little bit in this image. Wish I could see more in the shadows underneath that. Changing the contrast would do a couple things. Give me detail back in these highlights. Again, got to have detail in highlights and shadows. But if it would have opened up so I could see a little bit more texture, this image also has been kind of pushed to the max degree and sharpened as it doesn't look to be all that sharp to begin with. But I think that it has been sharpened just because I can see the pixel structure. Once you have an image that's out of focus and you try to sharpen it in post, there's a specific, regardless of camera brand, there's a specific look that those square pixels have. And this feels to me like that the makers had to make it a little sharper or something. Also could be a preset. I'm not a big fan of presets because all they are is just a combination of all those sliders combined together that somebody makes to sell you, where I think you can do that your own. I would bring back detail all through those areas. If this is a handheld image, which I'm assuming it is at a slower shutter speed based on the time of day this was created, I think that's what probably gave that sense of motion. Probably should have photographed this at a higher shutter speed to get rid of that softness, and you wouldn't have to try to bring it back in post.
That was by Marianne Barnhart. Game rained out.
Oh, anyone who has children or grandchildren, this has got to be saving grace, right? Yay, I don't have to sit this until 10 o'clock at night, number one. But two, just the expression on that child's face and the rain and everything, fantastic. Again, structurally great, composition great. Don't really have a whole lot to add to this because you can't really do anything about you might be able to take this whole reflection from the window down a little bit, but I don't know that you need to because it kind of tells you what's going on, right? That would be a normal thing that you would see. Really good use of focus because your focus wants to always grab on the little rain droplets. So I don't know if they manually override or if the camera actually saw the eyes and did that. But great image. I don't have a whole lot to add to this. I love the scale of the steering wheel to him, repeating patterns and shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I love anytime a shape or a pattern or a texture or color is repeated more than once, preferably 3 times in an image is my favorite number. Even the hat that's out of focus, the baseball cap, still has that same shape. So subtly, and then look, you got a leading line coming in here. Lots of great stuff in that image. Whether it was intended or not, very strong composition.
That was by Carol Hageman. Gotham's, whoops, upside down.
Oh, so you guys want a little trick? Okay, so this is an old time trick. Anytime you're going to enter an imaging competition, close your eyes, flip it upside down, open your eyes, close your eyes. Whatever stands out, remove. So sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, but if you flip an image upside down, your brain can't lock on to where you have told yourself the story is, and anything that stands out, remove. I use that every image I enter an image competition. That's my final check, is to flip it upside down. You can't look at it too long.
This is titled Gotham City Hall.
Great. Photographing at this time of day where you have those lights coming in and a night scene gives that whole feeling to Gotham, right? It has that moody, almost superhero Batman kind of feel to it. Love the light coming in. Of course, again, side lighting picks up all the textures. Held great detail throughout the highlights and shadows, and has great detail and separation even into the trees. And here doesn't appear to have any post-production done, but maybe a little sharpening. Fantastic image. The only thing I would probably do if this were my image, and I base everything on what I would do if I were the maker, whether that's right or wrong, I would change the perspective. I would go in and copy this layer, transform, perspective control, and I would have pulled these so that they're straight, aspherically straight, like you would have done with an architecturally corrected lens. Anyone who shoots architecture or interiors, this will drive you crazy if things don't line up. So that's the only thing I would have done, is I would have grabbed the upper handles and that perspective control, and it would fix this. and fix that. That's the only thing I would do to change that.
That was by Michael Bryant. This is Grand Haven Pier.
Okay, so this is a very famous pier to photograph. I've seen it a million times. I've seen it iced over. I've seen it not iced over. I think the overall image is a little too light. Would love to see it taken down a little bit in exposure because I'm starting to lose a little bit of the detail up and through here. Love the slow shutter speed that creates this velvety water. And that's one thing that this location, every image I've ever seen, even if it's iced over, has that soft kind of feel to it. Watch your sharpening line when you get in through here. Not sure why there's darkness in between here and not in any of the other. It seems like they would all be consistent unless there's something dumping down, unless there's water coming down from there. But there's no evidence of it anywhere else in the image. Probably would darken select areas too, only because starting to lose a little bit of contrast. You get more contrast back in this than you do here in the lighthouse. And then also watch, because sometimes you'll get, let me think if I remember the correct term for this. And I won't, it'll come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning. But you get these purple jagged lines around structures when you have contrast. Chromatic aberration, thank you. So I would be careful about chromatic aberration in there. And again, some of these things you're never going to see until you enlarge the image. Sometimes you'll never see it on your particular monitor. I would highly recommend that anytime every photographer have a corrected and a neutralized monitor using one of those spider controls or something from Calibrate, I think is their new company. But that neutralizes your monitor because all your monitors come from the factory in their laboratory. So I always check my monitor every couple of weeks. I also hold a print up to it and look at the same image in the same lighting to make sure that what I'm seeing in the camera, in the print, and on the digital screen all align as close as possible. Love the perspective, though, of this. Great location. Someday I'll go there.
That was by Paul Bickford. This is titled Grumpy.
So perfect title for this, too. So couple things. One, point of focus. Unfortunately, this is where the point of focus is. And whenever you have eyes in any human or animal, they need to be in focus. So unfortunately, if this were photographed, and I'm assuming at a wider open aperture because of the fall off in depth of focus, that this image, the focus box grabbed here, and it should have grabbed here. Because depth of field, depth of focus runs 1/3 in front and 2/3 behind your aperture. So if I'm at f8, does everybody know this? If you're at f8, you have from here to here in focus, right? Hypothetical. If you focus in the middle of that, more is going to be in focus behind it, but it's going to fall off quick here. You're always better to focus 1/3 into the image. Think of it this way. If you have 10 rows of football players on bleachers, and you need to make the first row in focus and the last row in focus, once you determine what aperture will be appropriate for that, always f11, f16, by the way, put your focus box 1/3 in, so on the third row, and at that aperture, you will have everything in focus, foreground to background, but your foreground's always going to fall off faster than your background. So wish that the eyes were more in focus. I love that they pulled a little bit of this orange into the stroke, but that's a crazy strong color. So I would thin that stroke line down just a smidge. Also, I think this is a great image where bullseye composition would be best. Probably, I like leaving the extra space down here so that you see this kind of definition in the feathers. Not crazy about this in the background, not crazy about that pattern. Wish that could have been removed or eliminated because it totally competes against and doesn't complement the texture here. Had that been a seersucker, pinstripe. Probably would have been a better texture. I don't know if that's someone's shirt or a picnic blanket or whatever. Notice too that all the light is here, not in the eyes, because again, it's natural light. And it's overcast light, so it's kind of forgiving. But I would, if I were entering an image competition, I'd go in and put a catch light and bring out the iris of the eye, even if they're dead like that. Make sure you do it realistic to the species. And that's also a great image that could be wonderful in black and white, because you won't notice that checkered pattern, that Madras checkered pattern in the background as much.
That was by Kemp Davis. Guardians of the Sea.
Okay, talk about right time of day, right location, right everything. This nails it. Great saturation, great leading lines coming in, compositionally strong, phenomenal sky, bonus bird. I always keep a pack of crackers in my car. If you want birds in your image, throw crackers in the air, you'll get birds. Be careful, don't throw them over your head or your camera, because you might get something else that you didn't ask for. Happened many times. Another example of watch your sharpening is I'm starting to see a little bit of that line all the way around here. But wonderful, soft quality light, but still texturally enough that you get all of the texture throughout. Not sure if this vignetting or burning in was naturally done or added. It's kind of weird that it goes from specular highlight to a little mushy in there, especially since this end doesn't have that as much. But push the shutter at the right time when the light was still directional in overcast and stormy days. And the great thing about photographing on rainy days or windy days is you always get beautiful sky. Always.
That was by Ann Fulcher.
Of course it was.
And I just want to say we have about 68 photos
Okay, I'll
left
speed it
in
up.
1 hour.
Yep.
So, sorry.
Now
This one's titled Homegrown. I'm sorry.
okay. So this is This is something we're seeing a lot more of now, which is live music events and astrophotography. So you can't control the lighting; you just have to be at the right place at the right time. Great image. Love how the colors play warm to cool. Wish the microphone weren't coming out of the back of him, fearing him. But everything else in this image is great use of texture. I like how the lighting hits his beard too, and you still get a little bit of accent light all around his left side.
That was by Rebecca Perry. This is titled Hot Day Ahead.
Great, and totally feels like a humid day like it is outside now. Great leading lines, phenomenal composition. Post-production, extremely well done, if any were done at all. No obvious lines or anything around. Love the composition too, being kind of off-centered a little bit, and it pulls you right back into that void. Really great, strong composition in this image.
That was by Vic Grand. This is titled Jack and Blue.
Okay, so playing different light sources, right? You have a very warm degree Kelvin of the inside light of the jack-o'-lantern, and then the blues that were added to the back. Unfortunately, the fog in this kind of degrades the image a little bit, so I'm losing, and I'm getting some of that posterization where the image has been pushed a little bit too far in those reds that are in the very bottom, or oranges, whichever they may be. I think also this might be a great image to stand up or change your camera angle a little higher versus underneath. In that way, the eyes of the jack-o'-lantern, you'd see a little bit more of the top. They wouldn't run off the top of that.
That was by Cindy Walker. This is titled Keeper of the Flame.
Cute, great story, great still life. Beautiful lighting coming in from the side, from the left, which gives you all of the detail and all the flowers and all of that. The only thing I would do here is I would space those elements out just a little bit. They start to get a little bit crowded in here. Notice there's great space in between these items, but these are all kind of cluttered in. So I would have liked to have pulled that over here and spread these out and given a little bit more space. Also try never to cut off the top of anything, unless it's a human head sometimes to get real close into the eyes. But it's been better to leave that in, because you, again, repeating shapes eyes, clock, round, round, even that loop.
That was by Carol Annis. King of the Hill.
Ooh, I love this. So talk about right time, right place. That accent light from the sun coming all the way around that emu, lamb, whatever that animal is. Phenomenal. It even like outlines all of them. And it kept enough natural light that you still see all the detail throughout. And then you have all of this beautiful sky in there. Composition is great. Your eye comes in, comes back up. These leading lines draw you right back in. Rule of thirds, extremely well done.
That was by Evstathios Spinos.
That'll never happen again either. He'll never get that, he or she will never get that shot ever again either.
This is titled Laid to Rest.
Wow. That is so fantastic use of color. The warmth of the sun, the coolness from the fog, even leading all into the back. Phenomenal composition. Again, gosh, you got all these great leading lines, leading line, leading line, leading line. Even when you get back here, you see that little ridge. And then you still have like little mountain peaks in there. Phenomenal image.
That was by Jane Webb. This is Light My Way.
Okay, like where we're going with this, unfortunately, there's nothing in focus. I don't think. And if it is, the fog has taken it down to the point, and I'm guessing that the maker, this was slightly underexposed and they lightened it a little bit because I'm starting to pick up all kinds of grain and noise throughout the image. But unfortunately, I lack anything at this point. Maybe that's sharp. But I don't have a place to land because there's nothing sharp in that. You know, I want something crisp and sharp. Wish that all of this road were sharper because that's where my eye goes, right? I come in here, I come up through here. Wish that weren't there, that white pole, because it's in contrast to everything else that's there.
That was by Gary Kornfeld.
Those are also extremely hard images to do in foggy conditions.
This is Man in Blue.
Okay, love this because you don't really need to see his face. The only thing I would watch is, again, we have that sharpening line and masking around. I love that they brought out texture and clarity in this, maybe a little structure too, because it gives you that crunchy kind of almost overdone texture. But I think here's a situation where over works because everything else is velvety soft. Even the railing, choosing a wide open aperture, I'm guessing focal point is either here, here, or here. But I love the texture coming in from the sides and stuff too. Great to put something really sharp against a background that's velvety soft, because again, that's a point of contrast. Great mood and feeling in that.
That was by Jean Boyd. This is titled Misty Morning.
Again, great foggy, perfect time of day. Sharp where it needs to be. Maybe starting to get a little line around. Backlit images are really hard for that, getting that sharpening lines or post-production lines too. I think this would be great if we added more space here, make it a long, skinny panorama, and let me see more of that water going off and let that be on that third. This landmass almost overpowers a little bit because my eye wants to go here. Now, and if there were more space out in front, my eye would be more on the bird. But I think if this is a situation where I would love to have seen this extended way out to probably here and make that a long, skinny panorama would be absolutely amazing.
That was by Parks Roundtree. This is titled Peace.
Great use of black and white. I'm assuming it's Hollywood Cemetery. But great use of texture. Starting to get a little bit of that chromatic aberration around. So I'd watch that because that just signs that something maybe pushed a little bit. I think this also would benefit by having a little teeny bit more space all the way around it, and definitely more space here than at the bottom. I think the bottom crop is correct. Of course, there's going to be stuff on either sides of this image, right? We're not kidding each other that that's just greenery going out. But I think this having more space around it would be a big benefit.
That was by Mark Best. Peekaboo Sunrise.
Beautiful time of day, great marshy look. I love that the light's kind of just peering in through here. Probably a situation where I'd back off on the saturation. In this type of image, it's just natural for photographers for us to want to beef up that color, but I think dialing that back would be a little bit better. Also, again, I would love to see a wider, because I know what's out here, right? That's going this way. Would love to have seen a little bit more. Plus, it would have given me more of that golden strip, and probably could have used a crop about right here. Nice presentation, nice matte and stroke.
That was by Fred Morton.
Oh, hello, Fred.
This is titled Pensive Mood.
All right, love this. Don't know how the maker created this. Almost feels like it was done on film, because the image really starts to fall apart and have that softness that you could only get from negative film. So I'm not sure if this was done on film or not. I love the artwork that's been done to the hair and the eyes to bring it back. Wish the composition were a little stronger. Wish crop it here, leave more space there. Not sure about this. Wish that came in this way, or to her eyes. Definitely the eyes and skin have been brought out in this a little bit. Very interesting because it almost makes it feel like a painting with all the splattering of color in the pixelization. I'd be interested to know how that was created.
That was by Ed Hageman. This is Piano Man.
Phenomenal. Another one of the great, I'm a huge live music person. I see all kinds of live shows, heading out Thursday, as a matter of fact. So these moments are fantastic. The fact that the maker was able to get nothing in the background is unusually. You normally get all kinds of people or wires or backstage. You know, these images are really hard. This is great because you got great texture, great image fidelity. The contrast in this, I think, is really well. I see great detail and exposure. Again, wish everything had a little bit more space all the way around it. And if you really want this type of image to go over the top, wait until the spotlight comes from behind him, forcing face into shadow in here. And it'll happen. You just have to wait for the right moment because they change lighting based on the songs and how the song's going. That's pretty much flat lighting. The lighting is, and where you can tell direction of light is where the shadow is. The light comes opposite that. You can see where the reflection of the glasses are. Flat lighting's not the best, but in situations like this, it's uncontrolled. You can't always be at the right place at the right time, unless you wait.
That was by Harold Lana. This is Remembrance.
Great use of composition. Again, wish there were teeny little bit more space. Think you could add more space up here at the top too, which is probably in the frame because that's not a digital camera format normally. Would want to darken the whole overall image. I think it's a little bit too light, and bring detail back, especially here because this is the point of contrast and it really should be here. Another thing you can do is in Photoshop, you can go image adjust black and white. And if any of you have ever printed or shot with black and white filters back in the day, they're all available to you digitally. So you can play with greens and reds and textures and skin tones. That is so much easier than it was back in the darkroom days.
That was by Michael Orr. Secrets in the Conservatory.
Okay, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So this is a perfect example of what we call in PPA, we call overdone. So obviously have pushed this image to the point where you're losing valuable detail in the highlights, and you've opened up so much in the shadows that there's lots of noise and structure in it. Fun to play around with. Not the kind of thing I would enter in competition to be successful. Because when you push something this far that you're starting to, the image is actually starting to fall apart. And obviously this maker has done a lot of work on this. Like, I don't even want to know how many hours they spent doing this. But unfortunately, we've pushed the shadow areas and the highlight areas way beyond. See this little hazy thing that's going on right around this ridge? That's signs that it's been pushed too far too. And unless you bracket exposures on this, there's no way you're going to get appropriate detail here, 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 and in there.
That was by Dave Johnson. This is Strength in Silence.
Okay. Great image. Contrast has been pushed a little bit too far. So I don't see any detail in her dress or in the shawl. And I'm starting to lose all the detail back in here. Back off on the contrast of this image. Not sure if it's tack sharp. I see more sharpness back here than I do on her face. But this is a great image that would probably do better in black and white. Because again, you can play with those filters and change all this contrast and bring all kinds of yumminess back in here. But there's so much going on that the background actually overshadows her, I think, a little too much.
That was by Shashi Air. The Dark Night.
Love this. Gosh. Mood, feeling, texture, detail. Focus is spot on. Not sure if there's been any masking. There's something weird going on up and through here. But wow, what a powerful image. Great. I love the contrast of this. This is a subject matter that they push the contrast a little bit and it works.
That was by Tedra Kuta. Twilight Bastion.
Amazing image, back off on the saturation by 9,500%. Way overdone. When the first thing you see is a saturated color, you've missed the point of the image, right? It should be about the photography and the texture. You could utilize this, just back it off about 95%, and it would be absolutely crazy amazing. Also a great image in black and white too.
That was by Venkat Santosh. Twilight's Gentle Embrace.
Beautiful use of shutter drag, appropriate. You still get texture, but great movement in the water. The only thing I would do would be I would darken this area, bring back a little bit, leave everything else, just pull your highlights down a little bit in there. Slam dunk. Beautiful image. Great in color, but great in black and white. Look at the color palette of this, right? It's in the water, it's everywhere.
That was by Jerry Posino. Veiled Whispers.
Phenomenal. You notice that I kind of have a theme that I love to see longer panoramas. Look how much impact this has and the way you feel about this as a long, skinny panorama. Great detail, leading lines, even like little landmass in here, kept all the texture where it's supposed to and didn't over sharpen in those areas, and even picked up some modeling in the sky. Absolutely amazing. The only thing I would do is add an amazing presentation or mat around this and walk home with whatever trophy that they may be offering. That's phenomenal.
That was by Heidi Nunnally. This is titled Waiting.
Totally know where this image is too, I believe. Love, great use of texture, great holding highlight detail and shadow detail. Unfortunately, it's been pushed a little bit too far to where the grain and structure is starting to degrade the image. So this is a situation where working on a tripod and layering in highlights and shadows would be much helpful. Also, compositionally, it's two images. There's a curtain image and there's a couch and lamp image. So I'm confused. Where am I supposed to look at that part? Am I supposed to look at this? So compositionally, I struggle a little bit with this because there's nowhere for my eye to land. I bounce back and forth from each side of the image, but they don't connect.
That was by Linda Fern Schmiel.
Linda.
This is titled Windmills.
I've been here, lost a drone right back there. Brand new drone, $5,000 drone. The only thing I can say about this, wish that there was a little bit more space on that side coming in from that way. And again, we have those sharpening lines. You guys probably can see it on this easier, but those white lines that go around, also see how light that is and how light these areas are. They don't naturally occur. Same thing kind of down in here. So watch masking when you're pulling that in, but great location. It's interesting. There's humans that still live in there, and there's an association, and there's a guy that's the headmaster. Met him personally, helped me find the drone, and he helps manage music groups in Charlottesville. 2 to none.
That was by Terry Troxell. Winter at Blackwater Falls.
Beautiful location. Take the overall exposure down because I'm losing all the detail in the snow. Like the exposure everywhere else, but this is a little too bright. So tone that down a little bit, possibly cropping in a little bit here. But great use of composition. You're starting to get some leading lines coming into that.
That was by Kurt Engelman. This is the last of the assigned subjects. This is called Winter Fog, Kanawha Canal.
So I'm totally loving the theme and the way that you guys have used the theme. Fog seems to be a moody element in a lot of your images, which I really love. And that's hard because you got to get up first thing in the morning or last thing at night. Normally first thing in the morning. Great composition, triangular, all coming in. Love that the duck is, or whatever it is the fowl is off to the side. Really kind of love the not contrasty image in this particular. It kind of feels right with the fog and the detail that's in there. You could push the contrast a smidge in this, but I love the color palette. Almost has those old faded photograph look and feel, or Polaroids from the 70s.
That was by Patricia Munford.
How was that on time? Sorry.
That was
I can
beautiful.
talk about photographs forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. You got to kind of reel me in, but I can stay on time if you give me a time limit. Keep me on track.
Yep. So we have 44 images
Okay.
in 40 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
I get a minute each.
Yep.
No.
Do
I'll
this.
go
I can
back
do
there.
that. Any questions about anything so far?
General.
Huh? That is, we were on a Viking River cruise. It is in, I got to think about that. The Netherlands, yeah, but I'm trying to think of the city that they're in. They're all still working windmills and people live in them. There's only 5 or 6 of them. Uh-huh. And if you fly drones, there's certain areas you're not supposed to go into, but oops.
Alrighty. So this one is titled A Time of Farming Past.
Love this little speckle of sunlight coming through that changes the white balance. So you got your eye comes in and it's even kind of fades off and you still have remnants of it here. Great waiting for the right time at the right place. Like the composition, still could use a little bit of space. And that's a normal theme, by the way, is that everything should have a little bit more space around it.
That was by that was by Jane Webb. This is African Hoopoe.
Phenomenal. Great use of lens compression. Again, watch the shadow, watch the line in sharpening or whatever post. Also, if I were really going to enter this in image competition, I'd probably do it black and white and not use the color because you have this cool from ambient and then this warmth. And although they play off each other complementary, I think this is a great example of texture. So I would do this black and white. I would probably remove this white thing that's going right through here. Maybe a stick or something, but that kind of pulls my attention away. See, once you subtract those from there, then your eye is forced up here.
That was by Harold Lana. Along Came a Spider.
Now, this is great because normally insect photographs are flat lit or they've used strobes outside to do this. I love that there's a punch of sunlight coming here. That's where you get all of these little teeny rain droplets showing up, is because the lighting is coming from side and back. If you were to split this in half, you get highlights on that side versus that. I love the composition. I think it's really cool. I love that they left these pieces in because they're a totally different structure than what's inside and frames it really well. That's also another image that you could do in black and white and play with the blue filters, which would change the contrast of the yellow areas. That could be an amazing textural black and white, because look at every teeny little moisture droplet on that web is illuminated.
That was by Carol Annis.
Backlighting is the secret sauce. And obviously, here we go, backlighting. So you get that punch of light, right time, right day. Love the composition, love that tree's in there. Maybe add a little bit more contrast to this landmass to bring it in closer to the contrast of this, just a little bit. Still want it to be hazy, but I think it could use a little bit more, because my eye is drawn to the richness of the foliage that's in the bottom of the image. But love the vertical composition. Very unusual to photograph this vertical. The human eye tends to want to do these type of images horizontal, so that's kind of cool. It the viewer of the image, it forces me to think a little bit differently just because of a crop.
That was titled Alpental by Patrick Murphy. Block Party.
Oh my God, I love this. This can be any decade, any time period, anywhere, and it all works. Expression, great reportage image. The only thing that could be better would be a little bit more space on both sides, because I try not to let the subjects run too close to the edge. Plus, I want to see what's going on here, because they're waiting in line for this. So I would love to have seen a little bit more of the image on this side, but beautiful quality, light quality, the faces and the tonality of every one of those skin tones, spot on. Great exposure.
That was by Jean Boyd. Daily Meeting.
This feels like I'm in Italy, because this happens a lot in Italy over espresso. Again, compositionally, wish the nose were in. If you're going to include it in the background, you're going to make me look at it. Don't amputate it. Anything you have multiple of, they should always be in the picture. Hands, feet, ears, eyes, nose. Also changing the perspective a little bit, because I kind of want to take the picture from where I'm standing, not from here. Because here, the perspective is off a little bit, thus the lines. And I think this could be really cool to include that in there. Again, leaving more space out here, straightening those lines, and then bringing detail back in here. Watch pushing your contrast to where you're losing detail in the blacks.
That was by Jay Denny. This is Dolly Landscape.
Okay, beautiful. This is waiting for the right moment for that sun to just skim through the clouds. Would push the highlights down. All of the highlights need to go down a little bit. Probably would crop about right here, leaving the bottom of the image to be weighted heavier by darkness. Pull all the highlights down so that you get more texture in, and that's a phenomenal image. Probably would want to leave this guy in. Again, don't crop off.
That was by Venkat Santosh. This is Demure.
Beautiful. Almost wish it weren't on a black background, though, because it's just too stark with the colors. And again, the saturation of this has been pushed a little bit, but this is an image where, you know what, saturation can be pushed on this. Don't mind that at all. Interesting composition. We normally don't see this side of a lily photographed, only because their signature is that little curly Q, on the top that kind of bends over. But great lighting. I mean, you got detail all back through there. Compositionally, there's probably, and I love the color palette, the yellow. The more I look at the color palette, the more I like it. Back off on the stroke a little bit, because that's a strong color. You only need a teeny 2 pixels, maybe 1 pixel, when the color's that strong. Something makes me want to see a different side and angle of this, and not that particular angle. It's unique. It's not something I see all the time in lilies, but after seeing so many images, like the black and white that we saw before, you can't unsee it. And there's such great veining on the outside of these. Like the color palette, though, there's something in there is intriguing in the color.
That was by Paul Bickford. Early Morning Watch.
Okay. Take the green way down so that it's more in this density. because my eye, that's the lightest part. My eye wants to go outside of the frame. Void of detail, bring all the detail back in this. It's too overexposed. In these areas, although they're dark, I love all of the detail here and here. Probably would bring a little bit more detail if possible in that area, and it also may not be possible. Compositionally, you're almost dead center, so we'd want to see more space at the top or more space at the bottom so that this feels like it needs to be here or here or here.
That was by Fred Morton.
Fred, you know better.
Edging.
I can pick on Fred because Fred's an amazing image maker, and every now and then he comes up with that, and I'm like, were you high when you did this? I don't understand. What's Fred? That's not, you know better.
It was
Crazy.
gummies.
He's out there.
Hi, Fred. Are you in Canada? Or are you here? Beautiful.
I'm in
texture.
Canada and it was gummies.
Okay. Never underestimate the power of a gummy. Well, wherever Fred travels, it's legal, so who cares? Great texture on texture. Probably would be better to do this in black and white and play around with this color contrast. Also, leaving more space all the way around it would help. Great texture in this image, though. Great texture.
That was by Terry Troxel. This is Flower Works.
Okay, love this. Total abstract. Would love to have seen more stems down here. Maybe crop a little bit here. This is also an image where the saturation kind of works for it, but I'd back off 15, 20%. Only because when you push these colors to that point, they start to lose a little bit of detail. But the color palette in this is phenomenal. Love all of this. This all going on in the background. Great use of correct point of focus, depth of field. But I think cropping this a little bit different to show more of those stems, and especially if there's a lot more down here, push this to the top and show more in the bottom. Maybe crop off a little bit on that side. That would be a slam dunk.
That was by Kurt Engelman. Good morning, Richmond.
Okay, another situation of sunset images and loss of detail and shadows, and I don't know that you're going to be able to pull it back. Wish that we had all detail in all of that. The only way I know to get it is to work on a tripod, take multiple exposures, and layer that detail back in. Compositionally, I think you could have cropped here and given me more of that beautiful sky, too.
That was by Tedra Kuta. Heron Elegant.
Oh my God. Totally obsessed with this image. Totally would do it in black and white because the green pulls my attention away. But in black and white, that texture, all of that, I'd work up the detail in the eyes, add a more punchier catch light. Possibly have a little bit more here. Over the top. Crazy great. I love that what the maker chose to put in the background, whether they were aware of it or not. Keeping the foliage down here, and all the foliage kind of leans in, and it kind of mimics the feathers, right? The shape almost repeats. Phenomenal image.
That was by Pat Davis. Hummer of many colors.
Hummingbirds are the hardest birds in the world to ever photograph and get still. So kudos to the maker. Back off on the stroke intensity. You can leave the width. I don't mind the width because it's the scale of the bird is of the subjects are bigger, so you can go with a bigger stroke. Beautiful detail. Back off on the saturation just a smidge. Maybe crop here. Get rid of that dark line at the bottom. Really, that's the image right there. You know, going to be kind of hard to take that out, but boy, that's the image right there.
That was by Cindy Walker. Just hanging out.
Hilarious. Totally would back off on the saturation of this too. Not crazy about him being speared through the head and body. These are things you see after you take the picture and somebody else brings your attention. You're like, great, now I can't unsee that. But this emotion is great. Unfortunately, image is a little underexposed, and or the technique that's been applied is starting to posterize the fur a little bit. You're starting to get a little bit of that chromatic aberration happening in through there. Probably would do better with a crop more here. Gosh, I wish that weren't there. Can totally take that out. In our, depending on the category, in our competitions, that's legal to take that out if it's distracting to you in the background. Can't do it in reportage in certain wedding categories. You can't alter and use post-production. But if your rules allow it, I would remove it. I would also remove this from here down too.
That was by Martin Evans. This is titled Last Light.
Love it. So reminiscent of the old masters. Love the composition. The background's starting to feel a little weak. I love the density up here, but when I get down in here, there's something going on that looks a little hazy or fog, and these type of images normally don't have that in them. Probably would do better if you're going to photograph still lifes. Push the background about 2 feet away from the subject. Don't have it directly up against because you get shadows and posterization from pushing it. See how those are all jagged in here? Wish those weren't there. Great use of lighting, though. Probably would leave a little bit more space at the top.
That was by Susan Kennedy. Light touches steel.
Okay, one of my favorite things about any bridge underneath is an architectural masterpiece. Totally know this location. Just got to watch out for the homeless people down here. Almost wish there were a little bit more of here. Probably need to take the density and contrast down a little bit more in this. Great leading lines. Love how the sunlight's just kissing the edges of all of those. Also, a great image could be in black and white. And also, look at that. Because these, you can't do anything about the washed up wood, you know. You can't do anything about the trees growing. But boy, if you crop them out, now look what you have at the top of the image. Nothing but graphic design. So sometimes cropping out and trying different crops is a great way. Like I probably would crop there for image competition, only because I play to win. So I always push everything to the nth degree of trying to take away anything that your eye's going to jump out at you.
That was by Linda Fern Schmiel.
All right, Linda, that's going in Virginia competition, black and white, cropper like that. Do you have more space all the way around it? Talk to me later. That's a winner. I want to see that in our competition. This is phenomenal. I'm not familiar with this. Is the maker in the room? I'm not familiar with this location, but I think I know where it is. Madeira. Okay. Do most people photograph the other direction? And you chose to do it this way? A+. Because I thought it looked familiar, but I've never seen anyone do it this season, this time of day, this composition. This is a situation where I love the saturation. Of course, I can't tell because it's on a projector screen, but this would also be a great example of black and white. You could really play a lot with black and white. Almost might, is there more space all the way around this? Might want to see a little bit more here, but don't, it's so well done. I don't know that I need to see any more. Gosh, right time of day. Look at where the highlights hit, frame in frame. Excellent image.
That was titled Lonely Laura Silva by Efstasios Spinos.
Okay, here's something else too. In titles, 3 words or less. Don't use a foreign word. Don't use a different language if you're entering the United States. Keep it simple, easy, so that I don't have to stop my visual examination and think with my brain of what the actual subject is. Believe me, we can kind of get what you're doing. Just roll with simple, easy titles.
This is titled Magic Stairway.
Cute. Great use of combining exposures, probably HDR-ish, I'm guessing. Totally would be better without the child in it, to be honest with you, because they're wearing sneakers and a hat and a hood. And if that child's doing something in a cute outfit, great. But take that out, slam dunk.
That was by Dave Johnson. This is Majestic Marblehead.
Beautiful composition. Love, again, appropriate amount of space at the top. And I love when you frame things with tree branches, again, leads you into the image. You come back around. Probably would take the highlights down a little bit. It's a little too bright here. Everything else is fantastic.
That was by Karen Davis. This is Moonrise Over the Plains.
Okay, so great image, great abstract. Love the motion, the feel, the color palette. Beautiful. I actually have a subject matter, the green. The brown leads into it, and then I get a little bit of that reflection up here. Totally hate the title. But because you don't need to describe where it is, right? But maybe titling this something about abstract or flow or energy or something, because the color palette is delicious in this image. This could use a really cool presentation, pulling these purples and these mauve colors around it too, would take this over the top because it's so abstract. Amazing image. This would do really well in most competitions.
That was by Michael Bryant. This is titled Nesting Time.
Unfortunately, wrong time of day to photograph the subject because the light's on the birdhouse, not on the bird. So wish it were at a different time of day. Wish that the birdhouse isn't so prominent and overexposed, because I really have no light here. Also, could have benefited by a higher shutter speed to freeze the action. Hummingbirds are really hard. They move really fast. You have to have your shutter speed up there. 15,000. If you really want to stop everything, you really have to have a really high shutter
That's the
speed.
Bluebird.
It's a blue, well, okay. Whatever
But it's
it
a
is.
bird.
It's a bird.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, the shutter speed is not high enough to freeze the motion.
That was by Richard Haas. This is No Way Out.
Phenomenal. A lot of times we forget to look up or look down when we're in environments to photograph. Great leading lines, great composition. I love the void of detail. I think the contrast to this is perfect. What was the title?
No Way Out.
Great title. Totally love all of this. Man, no matter where you look, you have a leading line coming in. And these are interesting. They're not just normal, right? Great job. This could do a really cool black and white border around it. Would really set this off too. Phenomenal image.
That was by Joe Ring. This is Photographing Flowers for Transparency.
Okay, so I love this. Someone is actually, is the maker in the room? Someone is actually taken a still life of what we normally would see of flowers and done it on a light table. I'm assuming done on a light table, or has the effect of a light table. Totally love that they've blown out the detail in it. It's magical, it's whimsical, it's so unusual of what you would expect. I even love the fact that in this particular image that you've pushed me all the way to the edges, because it works for this image. This is a great example of breaking all the rules and coming out with something that's really different and unique. High on the impact scale. Great image for competition.
That was by Carrie Osterwinter. Poised to Kick.
Phenomenal. Perfect point of capture. Wish there were more space all the way around, because I love what's about to happen here. And there's probably another player. So image would be great if I were not cropping people's heads off and had more space all the way around it. Great shutter speed, great time of day. Look at this beautiful edge light. That's secret sauce. That's what takes an image over the top when you have that versus no edge light. Great job. Could be black and white, could be color. I'd back off on the saturation a little bit though.
That was by Ling Whitworth.
All right, Ling, I expect to see that in Virginia too.
This is
Stay up with
titled
that saturation slider. I know you love it.
This is titled Puddle Jumper.
Okay. Great image to capture in a pouring down rain. I certainly hope the maker was inside and not outside doing this, because that's a wet moment. Unfortunately, shutter speed needs to be a little bit faster to freeze the action of the subject and the water droplets. Also, I'd take the exposure down a whole lot. Be careful too of little things that are traps in the corners. Great saturation and detail here, losing it all on her. And the image is falling apart a little bit, so I'm guessing that it was either a low resolution image, a JPEG cropped in a whole bunch, or someone took a raw file and cropped way in.
That was by Vic Grand. Quiet Opulence.
A beautiful study in black and white, inside a mall somewhere. Probably would want this to be a little sharper. I don't know what aperture this was photographed at. It looks like that this is it was shot like kind of wide open. I'm an f11 guy. I love all lenses, even your prime lenses, were designed to be photographed at middle apertures, not wide open. The camera dealers just don't tell you that. So if you buy that prime lens because you want that 1.2 blah, 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 that lens was manufactured to give you the best image quality at the middle aperture, not wide open, which is interesting. They're not going to tell you that because they need you to buy a lens.
Mm-hmm.
I also never overlap any lens I have too. And to be honest, I only have 3 lenses. I have a 24-240 that never leaves my Canon, and it's not a expensive lens, and it's tack sharp. But by never having to change lenses, I don't have to worry about dust getting in the sensor. And the least amount of equipment you carry with you, the more creative you'll be, because otherwise you're thinking about all the stuff that's weighing you down.
That was by Marianne Barnhart.
Great study in texture, great use of black and white too.
This is titled
Oh my
Seven Faces.
God, I love this. Crop it here. If there's more space, give me more space on the sides. Phenomenal. Right moment, right time. Look at the expressions on them. And luckily they got a little bit light. Burn this down a little bit, just a tiny bit, so that the skin density doesn't go too light because your eye wants to go up there. You could even crop this kind of here and here so that you really, because here's the action. Right here's the action. Great image. Right place, right time, right everything. I love the dagger. She's dangerous.
That was by
Scares me a
Jerry
little bit.
Posano. This is Silent Judgment.
Gorgeous. This is Ann Fulcher, isn't it?
Yes.
Mhm.
Just
Once you get to know photographers, you can know their work. Beautiful. Nothing really to change. Could be black and white, could be color. Love the color palette. Wish there were a little bit more space out to the left, Anne, if you're listening. Maybe back off on your structure and texture a little bit. It's almost too much. But now, again, I'm not looking at it on a balanced monitor, so I could be wrong on that. But God, your work is amazing. That's all I can say. For what she does in her day-to-day life, for her to be able to experience life from this end, that's juxtaposition for sure.
this is titled Silent Reflections.
Tone down to losing detail in the highlights, so tone those way down. And because of all the difference in color, I think black and white would be great. Wish that weren't there.
That was by Shashi Air. Stairway to Heaven.
Totally great image. Right time of day for this, although it's just overexposed a little bit. Darken it down a little bit so you get more texture in all of those rocks. And probably would love to see more space that way on this image. And would be a phenomenal study in black and white. I would choose to do this in black and white because of the sky. Sometimes you only get that sky if you're using filters, polarizer filter specifically. Is that time that to get that blue sky is not always easy to do.
That was by Heidi Nunnally. Steps to Serenity.
Love the texture, love the old film overlay on the edges. I love that this extra plank is left in to create that, give me a sense of balance and knowing that if you've ever been to the beach, you know that there's a walkway that leads up to here before you walk down. Love all the texture throughout. Crazy. I love the tent, the old black and white tent too. You know, this is one of those images too that this could be amazing. Drop it there. Gives you a whole different feeling. I'm not saying it needs to have happened but maybe.
That was by Tony Johnson. This is sunset watching.
Needs a higher shutter speed. And not sure what's going on because this is out of focus, this is out of focus, and it doesn't make sense in the plane. This could have been done using focus stacking, which allows that to happen. Could also be just the lens, but I don't understand how we go soft, sharp, soft, sharp, soft, sharp. It doesn't make sense. Also, there's another area that was masked out. See how bright that point is? Did everybody see that? So obviously it was masked out. Wish that there was a higher shutter speed to stop the motion and the blur around the bird, and wish that landmass weren't in the back too. Simply by crouching down to take this photograph would have increased it 1,000,000 times.
That was by Philip Snyder. The Face of Victory.
Phenomenal. I don't know if this is horse racing or what sport this is. He looks like a jockey to me. But a great color palette. Wish there was more punch to his face. Saturation has been brought up to the point where you're starting to get that redness in his skin, which is probably natural, but when you oversaturate every part of an image, the skin doesn't normally tend to do really well, especially anyone that's been in the sun a lot. Would be a great black and white study too, but if not, I would go in and bring up the highlights on the face so that they're brighter than everything else in the environment. His face needs a little bit more punch of light, and the background probably needs to come down just a little bit. Probably could crop this here too. Let him be the, I don't think it need this particular image, I don't think needs that extra space.
That was by Kemp Davis. 3 heads are better than 1.
Amazing, great capture, great composition. Not sure how these guys get blurry and the railing doesn't. So I don't know why or how that happens, but would be better for that to be sharp and not out of focus because it doesn't make sense. Why is the fence, it's in the same plane, blurry only in spots? So I'm guessing that was selectively done. Don't mind the saturation, but would be better if it were backed off a little bit. Perfect time to push the shutter button. And I love that there's natural light creating a ratio between shadow and highlight. Great image.
That was
Could
by
be great in black and white too.
That was by Bill Whitworth.
All right, Bill, I expect to see that in the image competition too.
This is Tree, Swallow, and Nest.
A little confused on this. Looking for something sharp. Almost feels like there should have been a higher shutter speed that this was captured at. If you're going to handhold the camera, you need your shutter speed to be about 5 times the focal length of your lens. So if you're at 200 millimeter, which if you're hand holding at 200 millimeter, amen plus to you. I certainly can't hold still that long. But as a general rule, that's the math to use in order to make sure that you get things tack sharp when you're hand holding. Also turning on image stabilizing both in the lens and in the camera body will help too. Unfortunately, I really want to get into this image, but there's too conflicting. And there's not enough really, this bird isn't looking that way. I don't see enough of this bird. I've got some vignetting and haziness going on, and it's been sharpened to the point where I'm starting to get some of those crazy lines and things around it. And there's more light on the background than it is on the birds. You know, the background is brighter, even though it's out of focus.
That was by Ed Hageman. This is Unraveling.
Gorgeous. Macro photography is phenomenal because we can't see these things with the human eye. Love the point of focus. Love that these are out of focus because they're really distracting because there's nothing you can do about them and they repeat. Love the saturation of this because we can't normally see this with our human eye. So that actually the composition, background, all of this is really great. If there's more of this, I think it'd be a great vertical because I think there are more of these probably down here. And be careful of posterization. Can y'all see on the screen where that's starting to get a little funky? Starting to get that banding look from the background being taken down too far. But I think that it's been taken down appropriately enough so that you don't see that detail, and it's just enough detail in the back. Sorry, am I blocking you?
That was by Patricia Munford. This is wading and waiting.
Okay, so another one of those sunset images, right? Where you're not going to be able to really get the detail in all those dark areas. And then the sun is way blown out too. Love the composition. Almost kind of wish you were in the middle of this, stepping that way, if you could, a couple steps without falling off of a ledge. Probably would crop out the sun at this point because there's nothing you can do to get detail in that sun. It's just way too gone. You can clone this color, put it over top, and back off a little bit on the opacity of the layer, which would put color and texture in there, but it would be unnatural. It doesn't really happen unless you do it manually. So I think actually cropping the sun out of this would make that a stronger image.
That was by Rebecca Perry. Wave surfing.
Great. Watch out for you got the sharpening lines going all the way around him. Probably would be cool cropped in here. Probably cool would be cropped in here, make it long, skinny, because right here's where all the action is. Perfect time to capture this. You know, he's still dragging his hand in the surf, which I really love. Surfers do that all the time. Not sure that we need that at the bottom. However, if you crop here, maybe you could leave that in. Wish there were more punch of light on his face, but in natural light, there's not a whole lot you can do. Would love to bring back a little bit more detail in the foamy parts of the waves too.
That was by Sarah. Western Beauty.
Okay, when photographing humans, as a general rule, especially when photographing women, you never want to photograph their body straight onto the camera. If that's the camera and I'm the subject, you never want to photograph a woman this way. You always want to photograph from the side, have curves to the body and movement. Never want to see the back of the hands. That one's okay. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great light on her face. If the main light were to come here, it would have thinned her face down by putting a shadow underneath. Saturation's been pushed a little bit too far. If you would have simply done this, that would have been a million times better. I'm assuming that the maker of this image engaged with the subject and told her what to do. If not, and this is a natural grab shot, just wait until she does this. If she's an actress on stage or something, wait until they do crossbody. 9 times out of 10 for a female, crossbody is always going to be more flattering, or one knee across the other. It gives you that hourglass kind of figure, and leave more space all the way around.
That was by Carol Hageman. Where's Mom?
Cute. Back off on the whole composition a little bit, tone the image down a little bit, change it to black and white, and accept the trophy.
That was by Mark Best.
I would put this catchlight in this eye and build up the detail, though.
This is Windows to the Soul.
Phenomenal. Gosh, you can even feel the emotion in the eyes of this primate. You know, this could be an image. Oh, take out that flying thing. That could be an image. That could be an image. Looking at the crop, I know there's more here. So I would love to see more of the body in this, whatever's going on. And I could lose a little bit of space at the top. This is a very emotional image. Love it.
That was by Michael Orr. Wistful.
Okay, great use of, when there's not a subject in it, not a human or an animal, great use of photographing silhouettes at this time of day. Always look for texture and structure in what you do, because you're never going to get detail back in here. But I love that they've let this kind of creep in to the image. Great shot.
That was by Gary Kornfeld. You Take the High Road.
Phenomenal. Pull back darken this area a little bit, because you're starting to lose a little bit of detail there. Kind of love this little keyhole of light. Love these verticals. Would also be an amazing study in black and white. And the reason I say black and white a lot of times, when you go in and mess with those black and white filters in Image Adjust Black and White, you really can can like darken this, bring out detail and texture. There's so much you can do in black and white, but when you have an image like this that's got a lot of texture to it, sometimes try it in black and white, because sometimes we get so overpowered with the color you really don't see texture, and this image is loaded with texture. See how the leaves are all backlit by the sun, so you get all these little white little pockets. Great punchy overcast diffuse light.
That was by John Schickler, and that's it.
You guys have a great body of work. Are any of you guys members of like PPA or interested in entering their competitions? You should, because your work is phenomenal as a body of work. Very diverse too. Yeah. Oh, it's where the city is? Uh-huh. Okay. I have that on my iPad to remind me never fly a drone without reading the instruction manual. And anything you put in the air can just take off, which mine did. And it wouldn't return to home, and it just kept going. And
We're jamming it over there in the Netherlands.
I bought that drone and was rushing to get on the boat and didn't read the instruction manual and thought I could just launch it and go. Of course, it's funny because in the video footage, there's one little guy on a bicycle coming straight at me. And he came at me, all right. And then he's like, land that thing now. You're not allowed to do that. And I'm like, oh, sorry. It's always easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And then he ended up helping me go find it, which was really cool. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Yes.
Want this, Terry?
You can go in with a brush. What I do. Oh, the question is, how do you put the other catch light in the eye? The easiest way is to take a lasso tool, draw around the other one, put it in, copy and paste it, erase around the edge, and if needed, flip it so that it looks like it's opposite, because you don't want them to be exactly, and always, depending on if the face is turned, this catch light should be smaller.
So it's Photoshop, not Lightroom.
The new controls in Lightroom, so Lightroom has a new patch control that you can do it. It's just easier and faster and more efficient to do it in Photoshop.
So
Lightroom's coming into its own.
you were talking about F11, F16.
Yeah.
I'll bet you F11, I'm F8, I mean, no. So they talk about, I think, optical effects occurring as you bring the shutter down smaller and smaller.
Could happen depending on the lens that you use.
So you're
Yeah.
not having trouble. I have never seen it actually
No.
myself.
No, it's an anomaly. It's only going to happen every now and then. As someone who photographs humans,
Diffraction, I think.
yeah, I don't really care about what happens in the background unless it's objectionable.
Oh, okay.
If it's objectionable, where I think a client or a mom might go, I don't like that thing spearing out of my kid's head, I would fix it. But because I photograph always picking the background first and putting the subject in it. Now, I don't photograph nature. I don't photograph wildlife because they don't own credit cards. So they don't exist in my world.
They might eat you.
Yeah, I got to get paid every time I push the shutter, and never had any of Bambi has never paid me for a single shot. Although I appreciate them and I think they're great if you want to do it. Thank you. But I wouldn't worry about that as much. You might see it more when you have speculars, like say a street lamp, and you get the starred effect off of it. You may see the shutter blades in that. But trying to get that to repeat would be nearly impossible time after time.
And any other questions?
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
It's a Canon RF 24-240. So the crazy thing is it's a crazy sharp lens and works great with the R5. And what I love is I don't like having a lot of gear, because in my world, if I have a lot of gear, my mind is on the gear and not on what I'm photographing. So I've taken the position, and this is crazy too, I've only photographed one way my entire life. Every image I've ever created because I didn't think I'd get to this point being old and I wouldn't remember how I did the damn thing. So I only photograph everything the same way, which allows me to have maximum creativity because I never think about the camera. I never think about the lens, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. I never think about the technical camera part of what I'm creating. I'm engaged in the moment 100% by making that an issue. So people look, if I need to throw something out of focus, I can make something look like you photographed it at 2.8 at f11. I just back up and zoom in. So that lens allows me to do that. And I can easily walk onto the beach, walk anywhere, and I've got everything I need in one lens. It's also lightweight. As I've gotten older, I don't have the strength and the stamina in my fingers anymore from holding the camera for so many years. So that lens is so lightweight, I can do things that I wasn't able to do with heavier lenses. Who cares? I photograph at f8 or f11. Yeah, that's why I say I don't care. You guys are all worried about how speed of your lenses, which really doesn't really matter. Because the distance you are from the subject, the millimeters you're zoomed in affects the aperture. So just because you buy a prime lens that's fast doesn't mean you're going to get that same effect that someone else used. So it's a 4.5, 5.6, I think. But again, today's cameras, you can jack your ISO up to 12,500 and not even be an issue, as long as you don't have to crop into the image. So I never really and I don't photograph wide open because if the subject or I move, I'm out of focus. Let me ask you this. Those of you that photograph wide open, raise your hands. All of you better raise your hand because I know all of you do it. Don't lie to me. How many images do you have to take to get one in focus? And isn't it always the image that's out of focus? That you took 5,000, V1, blurry. Happens all the time. Happens to me. So I challenge you all, try photographing at f8 or f11. And then if you want to throw something out of focus in the foreground or background, use lens compression to do that. Back up, zoom in, and at f11, you can make things out of focus in the foreground and the background, but you will be shocked at how many images you don't have to take because they're always sharp and in focus. So that's a little exercise for you guys to play around with. And I guarantee you that it will open your eyes because most people that are teaching you how to do or lecturing are always talking about that prime lens wide open. You got to buy that lens. You got to buy that lens. I'm telling you here right now, you do not have to buy the technology. You just need to know how to use what you've got to get that same effect. Thank you guys all so much.